Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining another EDX webinar. My name is Rory Fox, your friendly neighborhood account manager, and I am joined today by our customer success engineer, Brian Jones, who today is going to talk about what is new in SignalPro. So in addition to all of the features that we release in our monthly releases that we have, which you can read more about on our website. We do have release notes that come out with every release each month. And Brian's going to cover those as well as some of the other new solutions and services that EDX is offering at this point. And some of those are going to include some of the training options and some of the large-scale cloud planning solutions that we've released. So without any further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Brian, who will walk us through all of these fantastic things.
Hey, thanks a lot, Rory, and thank you everybody for joining. Can you see my screen okay, Rory?
Looks like it's good to go.
Great. So today's discussion is just going to be a quick kind of high-level overview at some of the main things that have really come up recently that are big feature sets or big improvements. And you know, I'm going to leave out some of the under the hood things and little small fixes and that kind of thing. So like Rory said, it's great to review those release notes. And some of these features that I'll be talking about today are things that have already been available for maybe the last couple releases, but we're just trying to sort of increase awareness about these features and maybe plant the seed, put some ideas in your head if there's a way that some of these things can apply for the use cases that you're designing to, or maybe will be in the year to come. So the first thing is one of those features that's actually been out for a little while, but it's one that was requested by a lot of different users doing a lot of different things. And that's the ability to run an area study with a collection of sites like you see here, where we can turn on now this run per sector option. And what that does is the area study does take a little bit longer to run, and it generates a little more in the way of cache files onto your hard drive. But that's because it's storing not only the composite combined coverage of all those sites in the group, but also the individual cover footprint of each of the sites, or I guess I should say sectors within that transmitter group, so that if you, let's say you're looking at the overall coverage, if you've run that study with the run per sector option turned on, then you can go right to a particular site. And maybe I'll just show you how you can do this. You can go right to a particular site and choose a sector on that site and refer to it as the focus. And what that'll do is change the display you're seeing. Oh, sorry, I would need to rerun my studies before it would change here. But the important thing is you can have one sector defined as the focus sector at a time. And if you've run your per sector studies with that option turned on, then focusing that site or focusing on that sector will show the coverage footprint of that sector for the site that or for the study that you have displayed. And forgive me for not running that before we started. We won't wait for it to go ahead and calculate now. But so that's the idea there. If you have that display focus sector option turned on for the study, then you'll be able to see the individual coverage footprints. And along with that, you can now export a Google Earth KMZ that will have the combined coverage as one layer, and then also a separate layer for the coverage footprint of each of those sectors. So if you're looking to have one KMZ export that's actually got each of those footprints in it, you can do that. And so, like I said, this applies to a lot of different mobile and nomadic use cases. and especially reporting and just saving time on reporting out for a group of sites. Moving on, the next item here that was requested by a few different users, and we think this applies to a lot of use cases, is the idea of having your CPE height, or CPE stands for customer premise equipment, and that's the fixed subscriber in any point to multi-point network. And if I set up a fixed subscriber, a CPE, in my CPE types, oh, I've got a typo for starters. In my CPE types here, I can select the location elevation reference. And so that's how high above ground level my fixed subscriber antenna is going to be. And I give it a height, but then I select this reference. And previously, you only had the option to have it be relative to the terrain or terrain plus polygon building height, or of course you could do a mean sea level. The new option is this terrain plus clutter option that will look up the height of the clutter for that location where the CPE is and put the antenna so many meters above that clutter height. And so the use case where this becomes handy is let's say you're looking to show coverage to rooftop subscriber devices or rooftop antennas, but you don't have a polygon building database for the area to know exactly where those rooftops are. You can say, okay, well, the clutter height for that location, if I have a building or a residential clutter type, for example, we'll take that height and assume that we're putting the subscriber whatever distance above the rooftop of that clutter. And so that'll give me basically whether I have line of sight to the top of the clutter, rather than trying to guess at how high I need to be in order to be above the clutter. And in the version of the software that you have today, this option is only available for the CPE types to put it above the terrain plus clutter. But in a future release that's coming soon, you'll have that option available for other things like point-to-point links and mobile remote unit, that kind of thing. And again, this is to support use cases where you're using really high resolution clutter and potentially even clutter height map data, and you want to position the subscriber device just above that clutter. The next slide here is actually a whole collection of features. The 5G module and also our LTE module have been undergoing a whole bunch of updates over the last several release cycles. And to sort of check in on where the state of things are as far as 5G here, this is my example project where what I've got is 2 different LTE bands, and I've got this one set up as a 5G project currently. And so I've got 2 different, I guess, 5G bands. And where I go to set those up under network design analysis, if I've got the 5G module, it used to be that we had just these system details where we would select the system profile and the bandwidth and everything. And so obviously that only supports sort of one band at a time. And so in the latest version of the software, we have updated this both for 5G and for LTE Pro with the RAN node worksheet and import. And what this worksheet is, I'll go ahead and pop this open just for those who haven't seen it. This is a workbook where I can define the technologies in use in my network. So I can define the different bands that I have, my subcarrier spacing and bandwidth, and so on. And if I have custom CQI tables for those technologies, so let's say this is not actually deployed 5G equipment, but maybe this is a proof of concept or a research type of thing for our hardware folks, you could customize this CQI table if you need. And we store this separately in this Excel spreadsheet so that you can share these RAN node settings between projects. All I need to do in order to import all of those settings into a project is to go ahead and browse to that Excel spreadsheet and then import it. However, it's a little bit sort of daunting for folks to open up that Excel spreadsheet, make sure they've got all the values input correctly and everything like that. And so you'll also find each of those tabs in the RAN node spreadsheet are available within the 5G networks details or drop down menu here. So here are my different technologies that I set up, and I can go into my sectors, for example, and see which sector is using which band, which system profile. And that sets it up, of course, since I can have multiple bands, I can have carrier aggregation and throughput for multiple bands and all that sort of thing. And so using these dialogues, you can make changes and then save those into your RAN node spreadsheet without having to actually, fiddle around with the Excel file itself. And just like I said, you'll see the options here for LTE Pro are exactly the same. And if you're using the current release of LTE, then it's definitely this LTE Pro section you'll want to be using. This other LTE network section is sort of the old version, the old release of LTE. And so this new one's got all the same RAN node import and all the same dialogues. And you can set up carrier aggregation for current LTE release as well. The other thing that I wanted to show as part of that is that we've got PCI planning and neighbor lists available. And in the PCI planning, so this is using a simulated annealing algorithm that we use as the essential solver for a lot of large mathematical problems like PCI planning is. And the key thing to know about this is that the PCI planner looks at the different types of conflicts. We've got intra-frequency confusion, as well as mod 3 and mod 4 conflicts, and you can sort of set up the parameters that you want for avoiding the types of conflicts. And then the fourth parameter here is just compactness, or in other words, whether your PCI codes that are chosen are spread out among the available ones, or if it compacts them into a set that are close to each other, which is kind of an aesthetic thing, but it can help if maybe an adjoining network wants to use a different set of codes. So let's see, I think I covered all of the details for setting up your RAN node settings. And I should throw out here, if you are doing LTE or 5G deployments or planning, and you'd like a hand understanding these settings in more detail and how they're going to impact the study types, please do reach out to us either through support channels or through your account manager, so that we can set up some time and go through all of this in detail, because I know I'm just scratching the surface here on all of this. So PCI planning, like I said, we look at both mod 3 and 4 conflicts, and then intra-frequency confusion, and just compactness, trying to make sure we've got a fairly constrained set of PCI codes. And so our 5G features are growing rapidly, and that's going to continue. The next thing I'd like to talk about is shifting gear entirely to talk about the mesh module and some of the new features that have gone in for mesh networks. The main one being the new mesh costing feature. And so to give you a little bit of background on this, when deploying a mesh network, our users very often they're in a balancing act between the cost of adding new gateways to the mesh or new repeaters, or in other words, a mesh node that's just acting to connect up traffic. And that cost balancing act can mean that it's more cost effective to leave out repeaters if they don't serve enough devices to make them worthwhile from a cost benefit standpoint. And in addition to that, designers were telling us that they really needed to be able to see how the addition of more repeaters or more gateways was affecting the overall cost of their network. And usually at this point, this is where somebody stops and says, well, what do you mean cost? Are we talking about deployment cost in real dollars, or are we talking about a accrual cost over time, or what are we using as the units? And in our costing features right now, it's just a scaling ratio. So you'll see a dollar sign here, but it's not necessarily real dollars. You can have this be accrual costs, or you can have this be actual deployment build out costs, depending on what your business use case is and what you really need to do. But the idea here is we can input the cost for the tower and pole candidates that we could build on. So that's, make ready costs on a pole, for example, plus the expense of the equipment itself and that sort of thing. And your candidate tower locations can have different costs relative to each other. And then our gateway placement, automatic site placement, can be sensitive to those costs. And then once you have a mesh network where you've got some gateways and you have candidate locations where you could place repeaters. Here, let me switch to a picture so I have something to talk about here. So all the little red diamonds represent customer devices, meter devices that are not able to connect through the mesh back to the network. And each one of the triangles represents a repeater that I've added into the network so that it can serve some of these other customer devices. And what the new costing features allow you to do, first and foremost, is define a cost for the different types of equipment. And you can see I've got a cost here for a repeater, a bridge repeater of 100. Again, these are just units, so the numbers can be whatever you like. But then the cost of an electric meter, which this is the customer equipment, and effectively I've decided it costs nothing if it's connected. But if it's not connected, that implies a cost either in maybe lost revenue or a cost for me to deploy some other kind of equipment, a cellular card, something like that. And so by setting up these different costs in the table, I can then run a study and see what the total overall cost that I've accrued for each of my gateways or the overall network is. And I can have the automatic repeater placement use that cost benefit ratio to determine where it's going to place repeaters. So in other words, if a repeater is only going to serve maybe one or two subscriber devices and it's not worth it from a cost benefit standpoint, it will leave that repeater out and leave those devices unconnected. And of course, that's all down to how I set up that costing. And so the idea here is that if you put in cost ratios that make sense for your business case, you can set up and design the network using the automatic site placement and automatic repeater placement tools to come to the best sort of cost benefit design that you can arrive at and get that done quickly so that you don't have to sort of agonize over each placement and work your way through by hand. And this is really going to help our folks who are currently designing really large networks with hundreds of thousands of subscriber points and maybe hundreds of thousands of candidate tower and pole locations to consider. And so again, the way you get into that, maybe it's best to show it on the slides here. There is a cost button in the overall run mesh studies button that will get you into this table. And then this appears in the summary report when you've finished the calculation. So if this is a feature that's that you'd like to use and like to really get to know how it works under the hood, again, please do reach out to us. And the last thing I want to say about mesh is that our development team has put a lot of work into re-engineering some of the processes and improving how we cache data so that you'll notice a lot of just sort of general performance improvements, especially in the topology reporting, which is where we look and see if everything has redundant paths back to the gateway or alternate gateways. And that topology reporting on a very large, very dense network was taking just way too long in some cases. And so there was a major redesign that went in to make it so that we could get that topology redundancy report to go much, much faster, even for very large, very dense networks, which is going to be very important for smart cities type of use cases, in addition to automatic metering infrastructure. And there have also been some other under the hood improvements to sort of improve how the mesh module works with smart cities use cases, which may take less advantage of meshing and operate more often as a point to multi-point, but where meshing is an option to reach out to those marginal subscribers. There are some speed improvements and things there as well. So moving on from the current SignalPro features themselves, there's been a lot of questions about our cloud computing platform and, what is EDX Cirrus, and then additionally Novus. And so I'd like to just sort of lay out what the terminology means and what the platform actually allows us to do. And any of you who are doing design work where you have a very large geographic area to serve, or a lot of devices, just a large number of base stations, that sort of thing, this might apply to you really, really immediately. Our Cirrus platform is the cloud-based platform that allows EDX to host high-resolution world GIS data, so terrain, clutter, building databases, other data sets that go along with that. And we can host that from a variety of sources. We have more than one data partner now working with us to provide data sets through EDX Cirrus, and that list is going to grow as well. And so we can host this GIS data and make it available for download and use by SignalPro, but we can also make those data sets available in the cloud for cloud compute processes. And, what do we mean by cloud compute processes? For example, if you have tens of thousands of sites and you need to do an area coverage map that includes all of them across, nationwide or something like that, that's a project you would not be able to complete in a reasonable amount of time on SignalPro running on a desktop machine. But in the cloud, we can make that a parallel process that can run quite quickly. It's all just a matter of how many processors, how much in the way of compute resources we assign to it. And so the Cirrus platform allows us to host the geodata and run enormous studies up in the cloud. And then, of course, once we have those studies run, we have these huge study results. And to send those in a traditional way to somebody else would be impractical. The file sizes would be too large or the resolution would be too low. And so the Novus GUI, the application or the software we're calling Novus, allows you to interact with those projects that you have up on the Cirrus cloud so that you can share and manage projects and results, do reporting on those projects, analytics, that kind of thing. And that Novus interface is also going to continue to expand to include things like a dashboard for usage of your current SignalPro licenses. If you have a team of users and you want to know who's using what on which projects, the Novus GUI will this isn't quite available today, but coming soon, there will be a nice reporting dashboard for that. And then, of course, the ability to share projects within your team or share them to the web for your customers, all that kind of thing is enabled by the Novus interface. And, you know, the Cirrus Cloud Compute platform, it's really not just vaporware at this point. We have done a couple of projects, including a project we did with the TM forum to show how we could automate fast design and propagation analysis to enable sort of the network adapting to traffic conditions on the fly. We've done some impressive projects there. And we've run nationwide coverage, area coverage at 30 meters or 10 meters resolution for the entire United States for another one of our partners. And so this is something that we can do today. If you have a very large study that you need to run, and it's going to be impractical, and so reach out to us and let's talk about Novus and the Cirrus Cloud Compute platform, because we're ready to go on this. And I should mention, along with this, the features that are built into SignalPro for point to multi-point networks and mesh networks and 5G studies, all of those kinds of things. The Cirrus platform and Novus platform will be growing to enable all of those feature sets and more. It's not going to replace or take away your SignalPro, but there's going to be a lot that you can do in Cirrus and in Novus that's going to be worthwhile if you're designing large networks. Oh, here's a little graphic just to kind of clarify what the names are referring to. So the EDX Cirrus Cloud, again, is our cloud-based platform, where, you know, we've got your data secured and your project secured, all those GIS databases that you could subscribe to easily and have access to. And then Novus is that application that allows you to interact directly with the cloud compute engine. And of course, if you've got a SignalPro project and need to push that to the Cirrus cloud, that's enabled via Novus as well. You would just save your SignalPro project and then push it into the cloud with Novus. And so this is sort of represents the next generation of planning large networks and extremely dense networks for 5G, mesh, whatever other technologies you might have. And again, if you've got a use case that you're looking at on the horizon, maybe it's not something you have to do today, but you're going to, please do reach out to us. We'd love to show you what we can do and work with you to leverage these capabilities for your own designs. I told you I'd keep it short and sweet today, and that's what I've done. So the last thing I wanted to just repeat is a request for you to reach out to us. Let us know if there's something that you're looking at in the coming year and you'd like to be able to do, or you're not sure if you're able to do it in the software. Our support portal, if you have not been there yet, and you go to edx.com and go to support, we've got a customer support portal where you can start up a ticket and ask your question, or look through our collection of knowledge base articles, which have also expanded a ton in the last few months. And there may be a how-to article that addresses specifically what you're trying to do. If not, our support team is available to answer questions or direct you to myself. My name is Brian Jones, and I do customer success for our current users to make sure that they're getting everything that they can out of the software. And if you've got a forward-looking use case, I'd love to talk with you about it. If you've got just any other easy questions about how to work with the software, please do start a ticket through the support forum. And also, if there are any pain points in your design process today, if there's a part of your process that's taking too long or feels like it's too manual, you have to do too much hands-on, please do reach out to us with those things too. There's a chance maybe we can help you just work around it or leverage features that are already there. And if not, we'd love to know what else would help speed up that design process, or what it is that you need to be able to provide that's not there in the software yet. I'd like to open it up to questions. I hope if there have been any questions along the way, you've been entering those in the chat or the question pane. Rory, has anything come in while we've been talking here?
No, I had a few direct questions that I answered, but I don't see anything that's general question that's in here yet. If you want to give a minute for anyone to pop in any questions, we can do so, and just let them know that the question pane is there. So if you want to submit a question, you can do that. If not, if you think of something later on and you want to reach out, as Brian mentioned, we have that customer support portal that you can reach out to. You can reach out to your account manager, and we have several ways to reach out for any of those questions or any follow-ups that may happen. All right, well, I don't see anything popping in, so I don't want to take up any more of anyone's time here. We do appreciate you joining the webinar today. And if there's anything else you want to see on a webinar kind of standpoint as well, anything you want us to dive into, feel free to shoot that over to us as a suggestion as well. We're always open to working with any sort of ideas you may have. And we want to start doing more of these kind of release type of webinars as well, where we want to talk about the new items coming through. And if there's anything else you do want to see, again, make sure you can send that into your account manager or suggest it through that support portal.
Okay. Hey, thanks a lot, Rory. And thank you everyone for joining today. Look forward to talking with you. And we'll talk to you soon.